Okay, this next lab that we're demoing is stuffed pork chops. I found this recipe at cooksillustrated.com, one of my favorite websites. It is wonderful. There are so many flavors going on inside these pork chops. It is a little high maintenance of a recipe. There's a lot of work to do, so we've broken it down basically into 3 days for you. 1 day of prepping, first day of cooking, second day of cooking. So this first part of the demo is the prepping. They actually show you how that goes. So you have filled out your planning sheets, okay? The first thing we're going to do is mince the garlic. So an easy way to get the skin off the garlic is to use a chef's knife, and you just cut off the ends, and I already cut off the other end. Then you lay the blade down and just kind of smash it, and now that skin just comes right off. And now you can put your fresh garlic into a garlic mince. All right, now what it's saying is that you're going to put all of this in small Ziploc bags. But since I'm going to, after I show you day one, actually make the pork chops for you, I'm going to use some custard cups. So I'm going to press it through here. Now, if you don't have a garlic press at home, do not feel the need to go buy one. You can mince it using your chef's knife, just like you learned to mince in Culinary Basics. And there's no reason to waste any garlic. I'm kind of scraping that into a corner so we can get some more out. Now, this recipe that we have provided for you makes 2 pork chops. You can easily double or triple this recipe to make enough for your whole family at home. I'm actually going to just make 1 pork chop for the demo. So here's our garlic. The next step is to shred the fontina, which is an Italian cheese, and the Parmesan, which of course is Italian. So we already have our Parmesan cheese in here and shredded, so I'm going to add the fontina to it. Fontina is a softer cheese. It's similar to mozzarella. All right, so I'm just going to shred this here. Now this is savory cooking, so you can hopefully be measuring everything by sight. We need about a 1/4 cup of cheese, and if you have a little extra or a little less, it's not going to make any difference in the finished product. Okay? All right. I'll take some of these bigger pieces and run them over the grater. Okay, again, fontina is a softer cheese, so it doesn't grate in concise pieces like the Parmesan does. Parmesan is a very hard cheese. Okay, so we have those 2 cheeses in here ready to go. So there is our cheese. The next thing it says is to toast the pine nuts. Okay, so these are pine nuts. And if you remember from Culinary Basics, when you were toasting nuts and spices, the reason you toast them is to bring out the flavor. So I am going to turn on my induction burner here. And I'm going to put it on like a medium heat, right around 8. Now, pine nuts, they'll take a minute or 2 to toast. They'll turn a nice light brown. But the minute they start to toast, they will burn very, very quickly. So you need to keep an eye on those and be careful that they don't burn. Now, pine nuts are very expensive. A small container at Jewel is like $13. So this is an expensive ingredient. They didn't used to be that expensive. There was a big drought in the area they were grown, so of course that raised the prices of pine nut. So right now they're very expensive. We used to be able to get these at Sam's Club, relatively inexpensive. You could get a big bag, like 3 or 4 pounds for $9. Now at Jewel you get, a couple of ounces for $13 due to the drought. Okay, so hopefully those prices will come back down this year. Okay. So I'm going to keep an eye on those and move to the next step, which says squeeze the juice from 2 lemon wedges, and then we need to save some of that. However, I thought we needed some lemon zest in this, so I'm going to check the recipe. And no, it does not look like we need lemon zest, so I'm going to go ahead, and here's our lemon. And again, occasionally I'm going to move those around so that now these need to be cut as wedges. I'm going to cut off the ends, not a lot. You have to save a wedge for every pork chop, okay? So you don't want to cut this in half this way to make it easy to juice, all right? I'm going to get another one. Now it is easy to juice using a fork. You just put it in here and twist, and that will break all those membranes, giving you plenty of juice. Okay. And it looks like this lemon was seedless. If there's seeds in it, you will need to pull those out. Okay. Now, we need 2 lemon wedges for this recipe, 1 for each pork chop. Okay, so I'm going to save these 2 wedges for later. All right, so I will set this over here with my ingredients. I will check my pine nuts. And there's an area where just a couple of them are sticking. There we go. And they're starting to turn brown just a little bit on the edges, so we know that they're getting close. All right, for this recipe, we need 1½ teaspoons of lemon juice. So I'm going to go ahead and measure that. There's 1 teaspoon. And my ½ teaspoon, and that's all the lemon juice we need. So we're going to discard this lemon juice. This we can save for another recipe. We don't need to throw it out. But again, for this recipe, we just need 2 wedges, 1 for each pork chop. If you're making this at home for your family, you would not throw it away because you'd need more pork chops. So as you can see, our pine nuts, okay, ooh, the counter was wet, are nice and toasted. So I'm going to put this into a custard cup. Again, you would be putting these into a Ziploc bag. Okay. But our job in this day of lab is to prep. So we've toasted the pine nuts. We've got that done. We have our 1½ teaspoons of lemon juice. We have our 2 lemon wedges. Now we need to make 1 batch of brine. What is a brine? Brine is a saltwater solution. Shrimp are often grown in a brine. Brine shrimp means they were raised in salt water. A brine in cooking is a saltwater solution or a salt and sugar solution. So what is the purpose of a brine? It flavors the meat. Not flavors it like oregano and garlic. It adds juice and a sweet, salty flavor into the tissue of the meat. So you know in our bodies, if we eat salt, we retain water. Well, we're going to put this pork chop, which is muscle. Okay, this is the muscle of the pig. And we're going to put this in the brine, and the salt is going to hold the water in the meat, just like we retain water when we eat salt. So that when this cooks, that pork chop is nice and juicy. All right, so to do this, I have my 6 cups of water in here, and we are going to have you make 1 batch of brine per table. All right, so there's our brown sugar, and here's our salt. Okay. And I will be right here. We are back. The brine has been stirred, and you can see that the salt and the brown sugar has dissolved. Now you're going to make 1 batch of brine per table, and then all 4 of you will put your pork chops into this 1 pan of brine and then put it in the refrigerator. Actually, you won't put your pork chops in. I'm sorry. Let me back up. You're going to cut your pork chops and put them in a Ziploc. You're going to make 1 batch of brine per table and put that in the fridge. And then the morning or the day that you're cooking, either you'll come in early to get your pork chops in the brine, or your instructor will put the pork chops in the brine for you so that it's ready to go when you come to class. So the next step is we've made our brine. This is ready to go. This will just go with, you'll put a lid on it, label it, and put it in the refrigerator. Okay? And actually your brine can sit out at room temperature because it's just sugar, salt, and water. There is nothing in there that is potentially hazardous. Okay? Now the next step is the pork chop. Now when you do the pork chop, I find they're actually a little easier to use when they're frozen. But this one just came from the store, so that's fine. You can buy pork chops that are boneless or have the bone in. Now the advantage of a bone-in pork chop is it adds a little, the meat itself has a little bit more flavor. As you remember from Culinary Basics, when you made your chicken noodle soup, you put the whole piece of chicken in there with the bone because the flavor is extracted from the bone. But these will still be very, very good. All right, so we're going to cut the pocket in there. So what I have found works best is a boning knife. Even though we're not doing anything related to a bone, it's a nice size knife for doing this. Take your hand, and I've gloved up since I'm using meat, and I'm going to press down on the pork chop not super hard to flatten it, but enough to make it firm. All right, and I'm going to turn this. You're going to go halfway in here and slide the knife in. Okay, and you can kind of feel that the tip of the knife is about right over here. Okay, and then you're going to swing the knife, cutting very slowly to make a pocket. And then you flip the knife over, put it back in here, and go the other direction. Now, and you just go nice and slow. You want this pocket, so I'll show you. I can put my finger in here and swing it around, and I have a nice pocket in there. And you can see, I didn't go through the meat. Now, if you accidentally cut through the meat, it just means some of your filling's going to ooze out during cooking. Okay, now this opening, I'm going to enlarge just a smidge, all right, and just, there we go. All right, you want it big enough that you can actually get filling in there. Okay, so now what you're going to do with this, you've cut your pocket in it, you're going to put this in a Ziploc, label it, and this will have to obviously go in the fridge overnight. Okay, so just a quick review. You have everything measured. You have your garlic minced, your cheese is shredded, lemon wedges, lemon juice, pine nuts, brine made, but nothing in it, and your pork chop in a Ziploc ready to go. And then tomorrow in lab, then we are going to make our stuffing and move forward with this recipe. Okay, and we're back to day 2 of the stuffed pork chop lab. So to review, we kind of did our mise en place yesterday and made our brine. So now our pork chop is in the brine. You want to do this at the beginning of day 2, so it's sitting there and it's soaking, which is good. And now we're going to make the stuffing for the pork chops. So you're going to need a food processor, and in here you're going to break apart a half a piece of sandwich bread. Okay, and then you're going to toss your pine nuts in here. Now, students seem to have a really tough time making food processors work. These are designed so they only work one way so that nobody gets hurt. Okay, so you have to look at which one of these is going to slide into this food. Okay, all right. And you can just pulse this until it's finely ground up. Okay, just a few more larger pieces of bread in there. Okay, pretty good. If you continue to grind this, the nuts will almost become like peanut butter, only it would be pine nut butter. And that's not what you want. You don't want it to become a paste. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside. And then there's a few larger pieces of bread, which will be perfectly fine, and then everything else is ground up. Okay? Now, the next thing we do is we're going to cook our spinach and our garlic. So I'm going to heat up this pan and let it start getting hot. Okay, our pan has been heating up. So the olive oil was in a Ziploc, so I'm going to squeeze that into the pan. All right. And you don't need very much olive oil at all. Okay. And you can just kind of move that around here to coat the bottom of the pan. And you want to let that get hot until it's shimmering. Now, the cooking of the spinach does not take very long at all. And the purpose of this is really just to wilt the spinach. You want the spinach to be soft and pliable. So you let that get hot, and it's starting to shimmer. Olive oil heats up very, very fast. All right, so I'm going to dump the spinach in here, and it's already sizzling. And you're just going to take tongs and kind of keep moving it in here, and you will see that it's going to wilt very, very quickly. And there's a leaf that looks a little dry, so we'll get that out of there. Now, again, I'm making enough stuffing for 2 pork chops, even though I'm only making 1 pork chop today. You can see that the volume of the spinach is decreasing as it wilts. Looking good. It's almost done. This is a very short part here. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to add our garlic. And you want to take that around in there just till it's fragrant, which takes about 30 seconds to a minute. Very short. You're just using the heat to bring out the flavor of the garlic, and it will also then flavor your spinach because it's all being cooked together. Okay, so now you can see how much that volume has gone down. Alright, so I'm going to transfer this to a bowl because I want to get it out of here. And then I'm going to grab some paper towels and I will be right back. The next step after we've cooked this is you have two options. You can put it into a strainer and try to press out the liquid. It's such a small amount that I typically just put it into paper towels and press down to get that extra liquid out of there. Okay? Alright, so either one works. You can use a colander or you can use paper towels. Alright? And the spinach is not going to be completely dry. You're simply trying to get the excess liquid out of there. Okay? Alright, so there is our spinach. So, our next step is we're going to mix together the fontina, the ricotta, and the Parmesan into this bowl. And really at this point you can just dump everything in the bowl and then mix. The ricotta is a very soft cheese. Okay, and again it's another Italian-based cheese, and it's 2 tablespoons. And again, you can measure by sight. You don't have to level. This is savory cooking. Okay, so they can be heaping, or you can level it if you're kind of a type A personality and like everything to be exact. And then we have our spinach and breadcrumbs and our pine nuts. And our 1½ teaspoons of lemon juice. Okay. Our salt, which it called for, let's see. Salt, we needed 2 pinches. There's 1, and there's 2. We need a pinch of nutmeg, and it's amazing, this nutmeg, it's such a small amount, yet it adds such a nice flavor. Nutmeg is used in a fair amount of Italian foods. I'm going to add just a smidge more. A lot of Alfredo sauces also call for nutmeg in there. And then pepper, I'm going to add a couple pinches of pepper. Pepper was to taste. Actually, I'll just add a large pinch. There we go. Now, I'm going to mix this up, and obviously this might be kind of messy because my bowl is so small. Now, you can also put on gloves and use gloves to mix it up like you kind of would a meatloaf. And if you're having a lot of problem with this getting to mix up, you can always put it right back into the food processor and puree it, and it will all stick together. That will also chop up your spinach, and if you get the spinach too chopped, it'll start looking like cream spinach. So if you do put it in a food processor, be sure to pulse it so you don't end up with cream spinach. That is definitely not the idea. Okay? I'll just leave that because that I don't want in there. That's that dried spinach leaf. Okay? So this looks like it's all done here. So then what you're going to do is this is your stuffing, okay? You're going to put your stuffing in a Ziploc bag, all right? And you're going to take your pork chop out of the brine, all right? And put that in a Ziploc bag once it is sat in the brine for about an hour, okay? Otherwise, your teacher might brine it the day of, so it's just coming out. But either way, you can brine a turkey overnight, but a turkey's huge. A pork chop's very small, an hour's good. Okay? Day 3, you finally get to eat your pork chops. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to rinse the brine off the pork chops, and we are going to pat them dry with some paper towels. So I'll go over to a food prep sink. I'm just going to take the pork chop out, and I will come back later to get this pan and clean up. I'm running some water over in the pocket of the pork chop. And then I'm just going to wrap it up in some paper towels to dry it and take it back over to my food prep area. Okay. Okay, so the next step here, and again I've put on gloves since I'm working with raw meat, you're going to take the stuffing and stuff it in your pork chop. Now this is not a quick, easy process, and I like making these for dinner, and I've tried putting the stuffing in a Ziploc bag and squirting it into the pork chop. It just doesn't work. You really just have to kind of deal with it and go with the flow. It's going to take a little bit. It's not too awfully bad, but again, I'm always looking for an easier way to get things done. Alright, so you keep stuffing this in here. Now, an interesting thing about meat is meat cooks better when it goes into the oven at room temperature. So if this was just in the fridge, you'll want that meat to sit out a little bit and warm up. It'll cook more evenly because there won't be any cold spots. And the same, if the stuffing is cold, it's going to take a long time for that stuffing to get up to your 145 degrees. So it's better for the stuffing to have warmed up as well. It'll also be easier to get in the pork chop because it'll be softer. Okay. So you make sure your pocket is full, and this one is. And these are smaller pork chops. Oops. These are smaller pork chops, so we may have enough stuffing in there for 3 pork chops, but no worries. So now you take your lemon wedge. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to use the lemon wedge to block the hole. Because again, as this cooks, that cheese is going to get hot and it's going to start bubbling, and you don't want it to bubble out all over the place. So your lemon wedge is like blocking the hole. Okay? Now, sometimes, I've made these many, many times. They are so good. You're going to really like these. Sometimes, even though I've done a really good job on the pocket and I've done a really good job on getting the lemon in there, it still blows when I'm baking it. And then all your stuffing oozes out. So what I've started doing at home, and this is not in the instructions, but you can do this, is I take a piece of cooking twine and I just tie it. This, just like this. That way, no matter what, that lemon's not coming out. Okay, so that holds the lemon in there for sure. That serves a couple purposes. One, you want some of that flavor of the lemon to go in there, and also it creates like a little pressure cooker in here so that cheese is sure to get hot enough. Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm only going to take off one of these gloves since I'm still going to be handling the meat a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in my skillet, and I'm going to turn this on to heat up. And again, that will not take long. And I want to put some salt and pepper on the pork chop. And again, you're just sprinkling. I will do the other side once I put this one in the oil. Now what we're doing here is we want this oil to get nice and hot. We are going to sear the pork chops. That means we don't really want to cook them. We want to get the outer edge brown. And then that'll seal in all the juice so that when we put it in the oven to bake, the juices stay inside the pork chop. So this oil should be getting hot in just a second. It'll get thinner when it's done and it'll start to shimmer. Okay, now it's starting to shimmer. There we go. It gets kind of a different look on the top of it. So this is the side I salted. So I'm going to put that side down. You can hear it sizzling, so you know your pan's hot. So I'll sprinkle some pepper on this side and some salt. And this is going to take 3 to 4 minutes per side, so I'll be right. As you can see, this side is seared, this side is seared. So what I'm going to do is put this on a rack. Now, if you don't have a rack at home, that is okay. It just helps the heat get around the pork chop a little bit more evenly, for cooking purposes. This takes about 15 to 20 minutes in the oven at 450. You'll want to flip it after 10, and then I'll be back when our pork chop is done. Okay, this pork chop has come out of the oven. It's all done. So to serve it, you will cut the string, or actually looks like it might just fall right off, and then you will, there we go. Now you can leave the lemon in when you serve it, or you can just pop this out and serve it either way. All right? Enjoy.